I do not believe AI is going to fundamentally replace jobs, but I believe people that use AI really well will. And what I mean by that is like an editor that understands how to use AI really well in 3 or 4 years is going to be able to produce better work faster than an editor that doesn't use it at all. And so that editor will replace an editor who isn't leveraging the tools.
Hey, welcome to the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast, a show where we bring together Marcom leaders from both inside and outside higher ed to give you fresh perspectives on successful organic content creation and strategy in higher education. My name is John Azoni. I'm the founder at Unveiled, a video production company working specifically with colleges on their storytelling and commercial video content. You can learn more about our work at unveiled.tv, that's UNVEILD. And if creating content that resonates emotionally with your audience is a priority for you, then you need to be subscribed to the Higher Ed Storytellers Digest. It's my weekly newsletter where we cover a lot of ground about content creation and strategy in higher ed. So sign up for that for free at unveiled.tv/newsletter. All right, let's get on with the show. All right, I'm joined today by my friend Seth Odell. He is the CEO of Kanahoma, a full funnel performance marketing agency helping colleges grow enrollment through smart, modern strategy. And I saw posts that Seth did recently where he was talking about his team recently went all in on integrating AI across their agency and trying to get away from, just chasing shiny objects, but really getting strategic about what AI tools he was incorporating. So I said, you know what? I have run out of podcast guests, so this is perfect timing. I need to get someone else on. Perfect. Boom. Let's get Seth on next week.
I love it.
All right. So welcome to the show, Seth.
Seth, thanks so much for having me, man. Always great to see you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Cool. Me too. There's a lot of content about AI, particularly mine in your world, is LinkedIn a lot. And I see a lot of just like posts about like M dashes and like, whether you should or shouldn't use ChatGPT for certain things. And my hope for this conversation is that we set a lot of that aside because I think there's like a overwhelming amount of noise about just AI in general, and the same stuff gets talked about, I feel like. So I'm excited to talk about some more niche, nuanced topics here. So tell me.
Yeah, I'm down to go wherever you want.
So let's start here. Give me kind of like a lay of the land of, Kanahoma, where you felt like the problems were coming in that AI could solve. Like what were the tasks that you were like, okay, let's see if we can automate these.
That sounds great. So I'll start at a high level and just say, I am not an AI evangelist. I am not someone who's just like so bullish on AI and I'm way out front. And I have looked at folks like that in the past and felt like it was just like shiny tool syndrome and like sizzle, not steak. And at one point I'd almost say I was like anti-AI. And I think like the hardest thing to be is like AI pragmatic, which is like, it's easy to be like anti and it's easy to say AI is going to change everything and all the tools are amazing and ChatGPT can do everyone's job. But like the truth is obviously in the murky middle. And so for me, as I was coming into the new calendar year, I was thinking a lot about our business. Kanahoma is a 40-person digital marketing agency. I have 40 full-time employees. And I always do this like state of the state address, and I set a few key objectives for the year. And I realized that we were just really not leveraging AI almost at all. And I realized that I think I had influenced a lot of that by being a little bit cautious and like looking down on it. And part of the reason is we position very much on quality and premium as an agency. We're a smaller agency. We'd like to think we produce demonstrably better work for people. And so better has been like a core cornerstone for us. And AI historically has not been better. It's been like, yes, it can produce the work, but like much worse. And it's really mid. And so I was like, that's just not our brand. And so I don't want that. And so I realized I was like, no one's using it. And I really feel like we're maybe a little behind. I'm looking at where the agency is going, the services we're providing, and realizing that like, okay, I think I'm making a mistake as a business owner if I'm not pushing this a little bit harder. And so I was looking at that. And at the same time, we did a big team survey in the fall, and, folks were feeling burned out and they were feeling like they were a little bit too overworked. And so I was talking to some of my leaders about like, how do we make sure that we can fix that? Because this is a separate insight, but the team was saying they were feeling burned out, but we weren't working too many hours. And I had really only managed the business to, people working 40 to 42 hours a week. And I didn't appreciate the nuance of burnout, that burnout is like repetitive tasks, uninspired. It's all sorts of like feeling like you have too compressed timeline. You don't have time to be curious. And so the team helped me through understanding like what is burnout in an agency setting. And so I was like, okay, so we want more time. We want less repetitive tasks. We want to be able to be curious and explore. At the same time, I feel like I need to push AI adoption because I do think we're missing what could be the biggest wave for a business like us in our history is to understand and leverage this. And those two things combined was where I came into the calendar year saying, like, we need to do a reset on AI and really all of us understand the tools that are available, understand our workflows, and start to understand, like, I think the thesis was there are opportunities to leverage AI that will produce equal, if not better, caliber of work while reducing the internal input of workload. Conceptually, meaning we should be able to address at least a component of burnout by helping address, removing some repeatable tasks, and the work shouldn't suffer as a result. That was sort of the thesis that we went into, and that's how I started the year. So that just kind of lays it out a little bit as the starting point, if that's helpful for like how I started thinking about doing it. And then I'm happy to get into what we actually did to try to like go from there to actual implementation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. What I love about your philosophy with AI, and I totally get like the hesitation, and there's such a spectrum of like embracing AI or being really hesitant about it. But you put it a separate LinkedIn post about AI being like a subcontractor, and I was like, that's a
Yes.
great word for it because in all the poo-pooing of AI, I'm like, well, would you poo-poo me hiring an assistant to do this?
Yep.
Like if I was hiring a real human and they did the same thing,
Yeah,
but
completely.
that's a great way of looking at a subcontractor.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I think one of the reasons I was unimpressed with AI early was one, obviously it was early, but the other reason was I was thinking that AI was something that you outsource large projects or tasks to. So like maybe a client wants a marketing strategy. Well, you can go to ChatGPT and say put a marketing strategy together. It's not going to be very good. And it's still not very good today. And that was like the outsourced mindset of like I'm responsible for this. Let me give this responsibility to someone else. And the mindset shift for me was thinking that like I need to take a large project like maybe on developing a marketing strategy for a college, and I need to break it down to its component parts and into its individual workflows. And so one example of that might be, well, I want to do a competitor scan. And so I want to look at what the competitors are doing. And it's like, okay, well, like one example is I can go to ChatGPT and say like, from a regional location perspective, who would you say are the top 5 to 10 competitors for this institution? Then I can ask it why and say, why would you say those institutions? Who do you think we missed? And then I'd say, can you provide me your sources? And it'll say, well, I looked at this data and here's how I pulled it. And it's like, oh, okay, that was a level of research that might have taken me a half hour on Google to do. And now I have a head start. Now I don't look at it as like now the competitive research is done, but it's like
Right.
this like assistant that gets to run ahead of me. And so looking at it as a subcontractor, someone who I can part out pieces of the work to, made me start to have a lot more confidence in the quality of the feedback that I got back because I was asking much more specific questions and I am not delegating responsibility for the output. And so instead it's like I'm still responsible if I'm putting this marketing strategy plan together, but I'm basically just have this researcher who's ahead of me all the time. And it allowed me to drill down the prompts that I was asking to be much more tactical. And that's been extremely helpful. And so that's where it's like AI, and a lot of times when I talk about AI, for me, we'll get into tools, but ChatGPT is a large one. We're on Teams, and that's a large one that I use. But it's the reality that it can wear so many hats, but as a subcontractor, not as an outsourced provider. So it's not taking over ownership. It's still my responsibility, but it can just assist me in moving faster through tasks that may have taken me a long time, either because they're repetitive or they're laborious, like I have to go online and Google my way through something. And if I'm Googling my way through something, ChatGPT is better than me in many cases in scouring the internet to distill stuff. And if that is a step of the process that I have in a project, it can handle that step. It just can't handle the whole project. And so that mindset shift of thinking of it like a subcontractor allowed me to feel much more comfortable with understanding how AI can start to insert itself into the work that we're doing, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So that was never more true for me than this morning. One of my tasks for the day was we're working on finalizing a script for a commercial for a university. And something about the last line just wasn't clicking between my director and I. And we did a location scout. So we were on a 4-hour drive back and we were trying to solve this problem. Like, what is this? And so I woke up and I put the script we had so far into ChatGPT. I was like, help me come up with this last line. I don't want it to be, here's all the cliches that you would predict it to be. Do something else. I want it to be kind of cheeky or sort of abstract or whatever. And it gave me some good responses. And then I kind of went in and like kind of tweaked those. And I put the tweaked response back in. I was like, be brutally honest. What do you think about this? And then it was like, it gave me this brutally honest like critique of it. And it gave me some suggestions of what to do instead. So I was like, let me test it. Let me take one of its suggestions verbatim and say, be brutally honest. What do you think about what do you think about this? And it critiqued its own thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, when you pull back the hood, you are in the driver's seat. Like you have
100%.
to have the vision and the decision making. You have to know what's good.
Yes.
And what's not. You can't just trust like, well, this robot knows more than me, because I proved that it doesn't know more than me.
Well, especially in creative, like taste is going to be one of the last things that AI is able to figure out. And it's like you're still the creative director and the editor in that role. And where it's performing so well for you is that you're really thinking of it as it's an ideation partner. And I'll do something very similar often where it's like, I'm trying to say that this way, but I don't know, like, what are other ways I can say it? And sometimes I'll come up with my own solution, but based off of what they said. And it's just sort of like this free extra creative in the room. So you're able to insert this extra person in the car ride who's thinking along with you. And one of the best things that I've done, which it sounds like you did too, is I love long form prompts. So I'll put all that stuff in there. It's like, here's what I need help with. I don't just put it in and say, give me 5 options for a new last line. I will ramble. And so like I use a tool called Whispr Flow that lets me hold down a button on my keyboard and it translates voice into text and it drops it anywhere your cursor is on your computer. And so I'll go to ChatGPT and I'll just push down the button and I'll talk for 2 minutes and I'll say, here's all the things I don't want it to say. And I'm worried it'll sound like this, but just give me 3 or 4 or 5 options. And it takes us, I'll put a 3 or up to 500 word prompt sometimes together and just dump it with a ton of information. And then it's like, okay, like you're not replacing me, but you're making me better. You're thinking faster than me. You're giving the volume of iteration it can give you is faster than we could come up with. And so when you think of it as that like partner who's assisting you, it's an awesome tool. If you say, give me a script, you're going to get a pretty cheesy generic one back. And so it is so much down to like how you approach it and how you use it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Have you ever had to manage the creation of a video before with an outside vendor? Let me guess how this went for you, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. You found a video vendor whose work you liked. They quoted you a bunch of money to make this video, and then you had to do all the grunt work to make this thing happen. You had to make sure that everyone that was going to be in the video was going to be available on the same day. You sent out some date options. Only 2 of the 3 people were available, so you had to send out a whole new set of date options and times to try and get alignment. Then you had to secure locations to film. You had to get permission from certain professors to film in their classroom, and you had to do all this stuff that was just not in your job description when you took on your Marcom role. If even half of those details are true for you, it shouldn't be this way. You're not a video producer. A producer's job is to lead logistically. Unfortunately, a lot of videographers are just going to show up with cameras and expect you to do the rest. And at Unveiled, we hate that for you. So if the idea of working with an outside vendor on a big logistical undertaking like a commercial or a year's worth of ongoing storytelling content sounds like a pain in the butt, reach out to me and let's make it not that way. Head over to unveiled.tv and book a call with me. Unveiled is spelled Unveiled. Okay, back to the show. All right, so take us to what you guys did. You guys brought in a consultant, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I met a gentleman named Pete Senna, who's awesome and wonderful, through an organization called Hampton that I'm in that's for like founders, has about 400 or 500 agency founders in it. And I met Pete through there, and he offers this like 2-day workshop. And so we brought him into the agency to do a 2-day workshop. And the way that it was structured, because I was like, I should back up a second and say, I looked at AI in a few different tranches, and the first tranche was just education. Like, I just need to increase awareness of what's possible and what's happening, because I think some people were wholly not exploring at all, while other people were actively using the tool, like in my web team or in other areas. And so I focused on education first, and then augmentation was sort of second, which is like, how can we just use it to assist us? And so for education is where I brought in Pete. And it was a really great 2-day experience. He started with, I think it was like a 90-minute agency-wide kind of keynote style talk about here's all the things you can do with AI within the marketing realm. So we really tailored it to our world in marketing and advertising. And he showed a lot of different tools, and it was just like, whoa, this is way farther advanced than we thought. And then for the following day and a half, he did breakouts with each of our service lines. So within Kanahoma, we have a paid team, an SEO team, a web team, an account services team, a creative team, a consulting team, sales. And so he met with each of those different groups, and he would talk to them about their workflows. And then in real time, it would be more like a workshop than anything else, where he would pull up tools and talk about, show me a work product? Can you give me an example of something? And he would show where does he think tools could be inserted to assist. And that was really helpful for people that weren't sure where they could start. And the fact that like there's different solutions for everybody. And while like a larger LLM like a ChatGPT is the right answer for a lot of things, when you get into things like video, there's very specific tools that you can leverage in different ways. And so that 2-day experience was really good. And then we kept him on to consult as people started to implement. And that was like this big kickoff event. And then we set up a Slack channel called AI Chat in our Kanahoma instance, where people are able to start asking questions and sharing what they're doing. And so that was able to get people excited, and people started to share different things that they were doing. And so it gave us like a high volume of knowledge sharing around use cases, because so many of the use cases are specific to individual units, but I have multiple people in different roles. Like I have, 9 people that all do paid media buying. And it's like, well, if any one of them is finding something that they can leverage, how are we knowledge sharing it across the whole team? And so Slack has been the way that we did that. And it was very casual. There was no mandate from me at all. It was just, please, I encourage you to explore. And I did get everybody on the team ChatGPT Teams accounts, which allows you to upload images and files, and it gives you a little bit more access. It's about $20 a month per user. And that was it. It was really just this keynote kickoff was sort of the like, let's kind of splash some cold water on our face and realize that things are moving faster than we thought. And then it also helped us understand that like our job, and this is probably the one other thing I will say is, it is not our job to leverage AI or not, but it is our job to understand the limitations of AI, and those limitations are changing and shifting as the tech is evolving. And so it means we all sort of have to stay proactive in understanding like what are the outer limits. And so even in the Slack channel, it's like, let's talk about when the AI hallucinates. Let's talk about the things we tried that don't work, so we can understand that like, oh, this aspect doesn't work at all, but over here, this is like an interesting piece. Like we had to update a bunch of different data on a whole bunch of different PDFs. And that was shockingly easy to do in ChatGPT. It's like, well, I was going to literally pay a designer to go through all this stuff and make manual edits. And it's like, that was a massive time save. And it was like, oh, we didn't know we could even do that. So it was just helping people realize that like when you run into a task that is going to be highly repetitive and highly laborious, slow down long enough just to see if the tech is available to help us move faster. And when we find those pockets, it's fun and the team like celebrating it. It does feel like, success. So that was really the first 4 or 5 months of the year was focused on that, really up until only the last couple months, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so exciting. And I resonate with you said, like encouraging everyone, it's not a mandate, but giving everyone the space to play. And I think when people just say like, okay, my job right now is to just play around with this. Some of the best discoveries I've had with AI have come from that time. Like I'm just going to take 2 hours and play with this new Google video generation things, see if it'll work for this one project I have. And I just find that that's so important. And I think we don't allow ourselves enough time to just play.
Yeah.
And just
like I've actually never thought of this till you just said that, but like my advice would probably be that you need to think of AI like baseball. Like if you're hitting 300 and it's working 30% of the time, like you're an all-star. Like it's supposed to not work. And I do think there was like this frustration early on where it's like, oh, it doesn't work. And it's like, it's not supposed to always work. And when it doesn't work, you are supposed to do the work yourself. But it's when you're finding the places where it does work. And if you adjust your expectation that the hit rate's going to be lower, suddenly you don't feel bad about otherwise trying a thing and it doesn't work and feeling like, well, I'm not going to try AI then. It's like the biggest mistake you can make is dismissing AI as a solution broadly because of a very specific and surgical execution that didn't work. It's not going to work in many cases, but it does work in others. And so that's like a mindset shift, I think, to be open to that.
Yeah. So what are some of the main pillars of tools that you guys have been playing with to solve certain problems? Like what is the stuff that you've implemented or are trying to implement that your team's getting excited about?
Yeah, so ChatGPT Teams is the biggest that like everyone on the team uses it. I encourage other business owners that like every one of your employees should have that. The ability to upload, review files, store projects in an area where the LLM is not being trained on your data is super important. And so that's the first and biggest is like whether you want to pick ChatGPT or another, like you need to get people using that. And then we've looked for a lot of universal use cases. One of the ones that's been very helpful for people is being able to like honestly organize and distill like email communication back and forth. Like, we're a business that unfortunately is still heavy email. And one of my favorite things to do is to just literally, take a client email and then reply to it with my voice with Whispr Flow back into ChatGPT and then have it spit it out in a professional tone. I don't ask it to rewrite my email. I I can write my emails, but let me just talk it out. And then like, you're going to format it correctly and you're going to make it professional and break out the paragraphs and clean it up. So I can focus on the actual intent of the message and like with the content of it itself, not the formatting. And for me, I found that like formatting and formality was an area of frustration as a business owner. I don't love sitting down and trying to write this formal communication. I want to tell you, asked great questions. I want to give you great answers. And so that's been a simple one. A couple other things I'll say on the ChatGPT side specifically is, in addition to like looking at our workflows and identifying components where we can insert it, there's also things that we can now do that we couldn't do before. And so like a simple one for me is I'm a business owner. We have 18 college and university partners at Kanahoma. I can't review everybody's weekly reports. That would take like literally like 6 hours a week to just review reports. And I have people underneath me who are responsible for that. But what I can do once a week is dump all the weekly reports into ChatGPT and say, if you were the CEO of this business, what would you see and what would you do? And it calls out, well, you are entering your second month of this downward degradation trend on this channel and this campaign for this client. And it's like, okay, now you're giving me things that when I'm in my one-on-ones or I'm in my leadership meetings, I can start to poke and prod. And so I use it a little bit like a compass, like help point me in some directions. And it's like, well, I would have never been able to read 400 pages of reports, but now suddenly I actually can. And do I think it's 100% accurate? No, meaning that like it may miss some things, but it's catching things that I'm not reviewing all those every week already. And so it's allowing me to expand the influence of my role in those cases. And then beyond that, I'll say a lot of the use case really comes down to the individual service lines in particular. So the web team uses, a multitude of different tools to assist with coding and analysis. There's a lot of things we can do with SEO now that we couldn't do before. And to me, what's really interesting on the AI solutions is on one hand, you have these enterprise centralized solutions like a ChatGPT. And then there's over 25,000 AI tools out there right now. It's really incredible how specific things can get. And so like I use Opus Clips when I post clips to social media. We use that sometimes for videos. Opus Clips is really great if you're looking for very specific things. You know, if you want to cut up like a multi-camera podcast, AI can do that for you and immediately do some of those solutions, which is really interesting. And so we have, I think at this point, I'd have to pull it up, probably 18 or 20 different AI subscriptions across the company. Some of them are just exploring, like on the video team, we're exploring, same thing, Google with their VEO3, and like we're looking at AI video. And in other cases, it's like specific, you know, really, I almost view them like WordPress plugins. They're like very specific surgical things that do one or two things really well. And so that's down to the service lines. The web team has their own bucket, the SEO team has their own bucket, and they're looking at different tools. And then more for sales and accounts, they're more like myself, where I'm using ChatGPT 95% of the time as my primary solution.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's very similar to us, like ChatGPT. We're super ChatGPT heavy. On the video side, you know, we are very, like, we kind of live and die by interview transcripts, you know, and so we'll take those transcripts and we will start a GPT thread for the client and have it digest those transcripts so that our team and the client can also pull insights without having to pore over all the transcripts. And what's great is that, you know, it's able to digest those so much faster than we could and pull out like, what are some interesting topics if we wanted like some snippets here or whatever. Another thing that I was like super impressed by was, it's plagued me my entire life of like going from like Word to Google Docs, same thing. Like you hit enter and then something just screws up and it's like, you can't get the bullet point in the right place. And then there's a 1, but then there's like an A, and then it's like, you can't get it to like do what you want. I was writing, you know, standard operating procedures, which is like the most fun thing in the world. Right. And I was like, I'm just not going to focus on formatting. I'm going to, you know, see what I can outsource this to. I'm just going to write the stuff. I put it into ChatGPT. I was like, make this really clear, you know, like, here's what I want to say, but like bold things, outline things, bullet point things in a way that makes this simple and clear so someone's not reading through all my jibber jabber. I mean, and it did it. It's great. It's perfect. Yeah,
that's one I do a lot as well. I use Loom AI for that. So I have an assistant that I onboarded last year. And so getting her involved in my workflows, I will, if I'm doing a task that I know is repeatable, so we typically call that like a ritual, either a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, or annual ritual, I'll pull up Loom and I'll record myself doing it. And then Loom has an auto transcript option, but it also can then take your video and your transcript and it creates a standard operating procedure for you. And it's like, okay, I can just click this and now it formats formats it all for me, and it does it based off of we watched what you did in the video and we listened to what you said, and we combine those things. And it's like, oh my gosh, like that would take me time. That is the thing that I would be slow doing normally. And like I'm going to sit down for a half hour and put together the standard operating procedure. And now I'm just click a couple buttons and I'm just reviewing it. And it's really great. And then I'll give it to my assistant, and then she will create her own loom when she goes through it and capture whether or not we ran into any issues. That's been really good. Another example on the account side is we use Fathom to record meeting notes. So almost all the meetings we're in, we're auto recording those, we're capturing notes. That is amazing because one, it's more thorough than us. So like we still take our own notes, but we don't miss anything. Captures the transcript, captures meeting notes, and then can even spit out a recommended recap for a client. Now we'll distill that. The account team will put their nuance on it, but it just like you think about like an account director, we're not a large shop. So I don't have like an account director and an account manager in every meeting. So an account director is in a meeting trying to guide a conversation with a client, and they're supposed to take all the notes of what everybody says. Like that's two different jobs. And so they still take notes, but now we have Fathom taking notes and it spits it all out together. And it's just super helpful. And then the only other thing on the tool side, like, Adobe does have a lot of great solutions, I will say, that are really interesting. Image fill has been really good. Like image creation is okay. Like I'm not a huge fan of AI imagery still. I actually think we're quite close to AI imagery and video being really, really good. But image fill is amazing. Like when I used to go on productions, we used to back up so far to take the widest shots because we wanted to always be able to crop for those few banner situations where it's like, well, we need a really, really, really long, really thin banner. And it meant that we would have to back way up and create these wides. And then we wanted to push in and switch lenses. And better than anybody, every time you add a lens change on a set, like that's just time. And so now it's like, wait, you're telling me I can get away shooting 80% mediums now for our still photography, and I can fill the rest, and we still do wides, and I don't trust it enough yet. But the fact that we can do image fill in a click literally is solving a time issue on set, which either means we're capturing more better content, or on a multi-day shoot, eventually it means we can move faster and maybe shave a little bit of time for the client. That kind of stuff's having like a real impact. I don't think we trust it enough to like trim down our production time yet, but the fact that like we used to shoot all these wides and now we don't, I was like, oh, like I guess that's just a thing of production past that like others won't have to do in 5 or 10 years. It's really interesting to think about.
Yeah, I love the generative fill in Photoshop. I use it often, and like a couple times it's come in really handy. One was like when you're on set, I'm sure like sometimes you don't have the time or the props to get the background just perfect. Yeah. You're like, I like this side of the frame, but this side's like kind of dead. I don't know. Working with a school, and there was like a fireplace in the shot, but there was nothing in the fireplace. So it was kind of weird. Like we were like, like I wish we had like some logs or something like that, but it would just like make it purposeful.
Totally.
So we just went ahead and shot it. And then I dragged a still frame into Photoshop and circled that area, and it put some logs in there. I could tell it different things. It could be books, it could be candles, it could be whatever. And then just patched that into the video. I'm like, that's amazing. Like you can't like
it's so amazing. And to me, it's like, well, you could have done that before with a designer. It's like, yeah, and how much time that would have taken, how much money that would have taken. And the reality is it's like, there were manual solutions before for almost all things that AI is doing. They were just so much time and effort that we wouldn't always get to do them. So the reality is like how many of those shots would have been a B+ shot to you or an A- shot because the fireplace is empty. Well, now it's all A+ shots, and you're able to do that really quickly. I love that. And that's where I think it's like it is able to elevate the output because it's being applied in really specific use cases. So that's a really good example of one.
Yeah, the other one was, we work in a lot of like student alumni stories. And so, we're kind of at the mercy sometimes if there's a specific story element we just have to have a picture for, couldn't get B-roll for it. Yeah. We're kind of at the mercy of whatever pictures we can get from the subject. And one was like kind of framed weird. He was like giving a speech and he was at the podium, but he was like, whoever took the picture like cut his whole shoulder and side off. Yeah. And so I took that into Photoshop, expanded that whole right side of the frame. Now he's got an arm and he's standing at the podium and it looks like it's perfectly framed. And then I was able to print that out and film it, film the picture for a video. I was like, that's so great. I was so excited by that. I was like, I hadn't thought to use image fill to influence like images like that before, but I was like, I'm not limited to now this weird framing, or like sometimes you'll get like, you wished you had a horizontal photo and you got a vertical one.
Totally. The time.
You could expand that, and it's all of a sudden now it's a horizontal photo and it's filled in the gaps, and
exactly.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so much there that I think is really exciting, and it's like you're not asking AI to go produce all of it. You're just trying to have it come in and be a part of it, which is I think really exciting to think about.
Yeah, so let's talk about content creation. So I imagine like when it comes to content creation, and I don't know if you have specific tools that your video team is working on or like any of your other content, text-based, content writers are working on, but like is there anything that's really helped you push like storytelling and content creation that's like a specific example?
Yeah, so let me think through that. So let me hit you with a couple tactical examples first, because there's not like one or two large ones outside of like leveraging ChatGPT as a thought partner and that stuff. I'll say some very specific things on the production storytelling side. One thing we often do in our videos is we'll have voiceover, because we produce a lot of streaming ads, a lot of commercials. So a simple example is for right now, all of our scratch tracks are cloned voice that we built with 11 Labs. And we have like male and female voice options, and we've used 11 Labs to create AI voice agents, which is really great. I mean, I love Matt, our ACD of video, but he'll be the first to tell you, is like his scratch reads aren't the best. And so you're asking a client to think about what a final spot's going to be like, but this is not the voiceover delivery you're going to get. And so already our scratch tracks are better than having our video editor read them. And then when a client writes back and says, okay, I want to change a little bit of the script, we can instantly plug it in, type, and we're right off to the races, and we're not pulling the mic out, re-recording anything. So we use 11 Labs for all of our scratch. We are just in our first client project coming up going to be using AI voiceover for an actual spot that will go to market. It was the first time I couldn't tell the difference. Normally
Wow.
we use voices and voices.com, and we record VO artists, and that's still going to be the bread and butter for us. But it was the first time I was like, wow, that read is so good that like I didn't realize that it wasn't a real person. And so like voiceover is a specific piece that's playing a role in storytelling. The other thing for us, we do a lot of testimonial work too. So we have a process called Kanahoma casting, where our partners will ask us to source student alumni stories, and we'll put a survey out, and we'll get on Zoom, and we'll interview hundreds of people, and we'll distill that, and then we build these bio pages in Google Slides with photos of the people and like a bio from them and a pull quote. We have in, I guess you'd call it alpha. It's not quite beta because it's not been a live project yet. We have a tool that is close to fully functional that takes the Fathom recording and writes the first pass of the bio for us and does the pull quotes for us based on the like creative brief that we put in, and then connects to Google Slides and builds the slide for us. And so it's like you do the
Nice.
interview and then it spits out. Now it doesn't have everything there, but it's like there's a level of copy and paste that's wild that we still do in our world. And it's like, oh, it literally just took a bunch of pull quote options. It did an initial bio, and then the primary writer on the project is able to review that and be like, no, let me update the bio here. Like, let me take the quotes I like and the ones I don't like. And it's like that could be a huge time saver, which is great because Kanahoma casting is one of the things I actually love the most that we offer. I've been doing casting since 2011, but it's so much work that it's expensive. And so when we tell partners, oh, you want to have us go find 50 or 100 stories, we're going to need like 50 grand and hundreds of hours. That's just not feasible for most people. And we're at a place now where it's like, I think I'm going to be able to dramatically reduce the cost of that offering because so much of the time that we're putting into this is now being automated. And that makes me really excited because it's like, I want a solution like that for more people. Finding great stories to tell can be really hard. And I think a lot of institutions end up telling the same 4 or 5 stories all the time because of that. And so that's an example where it's like, it's inserting there into storytelling as far as this laborious piece of we're going to go talk to 100 people and then figure out which 20 we want to feature. And it's like, well, it's going to spit out 100 potential slide decks that we can go through. I was really surprised that we're close to that actually being a solution for us.
Yeah, the slide decks is a huge gap for me because I will spend just hours nitpicking colors and, I'm in Canva because it's just a solo operator, type approach. But I used Canva's AI for the first time the other day. I was building a slide deck for a video strategy workshop that we're doing for a client. And I gave it the whole outline. So here's the whole outline. Here's everything, we're trying to solve for, give me the slides. And boom, it created them. I probably used 8 out of 10 out of them, combined a bunch of them, but it just made me a template that I was like, oh, this is cool. Like I got kind of a theme here, because if you just start with a template in Canva, you have to do a lot of work to like undo the stuff that you don't want in the template. So yeah, that was great. We've also used, ChatGPT with casting. We do casting on a smaller scale, which, I've always been so inspired by your casting process. I think that's like, I've actually gone back to our episode together where we talked about casting to be like, okay, he helped me solve that problem there.
Oh, I love it.
As we're trying to figure this out, but we've, been able to download transcripts from people submitting a video of themselves. We set up a portal for the client that they email out a link. The person submits a video of themselves telling us something remarkable. We give them some prompts, and then that spits out their video plus a transcript. And then we can take all those transcripts and put it into ChatGPT and like map the priorities. like, here's the messaging priorities that we want to touch on for this school. Who talks about that and who has the strongest story arc?
I love that. I love
Yeah.
it. Exactly. And that's where it's like, I don't know, until you do the work, I know people appreciate it. If you were like, I need to go back and find someone that really talked about affordability, it's like you're combing through so much. And back in my day, we used to comb through the footage to find that. Cause I mean, I remember shooting where we wouldn't send out for transcripts because we had to pay by the minute. And then we finally got to a place where it's like, okay, we can afford it. So we would do every interview, we'd go out to a transcript company that we'd have to send the files to and would send it back. And even then we're like control Fing in a PDF or a Google Doc and looking for the exact word. And it's like, well, sometimes people talk about affordability, but they don't use the word affordability. They might say scholarship or cost or any number of different things. The ability to do that stuff. And so to me, what was so special about that is like, that's more research and administrative, because then when you find the clip, you're still doing the work, you're still telling the story. But it meant that like, this to me is the biggest thing. Like, you're a creative. And so the question is like, if you look at the hours you work, let's just say you worked 40 hours in a week, how many of them were you actually creative? And how much of it was that kind of admin stuff? So, well, maybe you really were doing like, I think a good creative might be doing 8 to 16 hours of really good creative work a week. And the rest of it is all this other stuff. And so that's my hope with the team for us, even at Kanahoma, is like, as we're freeing this stuff up, you get to actually do the stuff that fires you up and the stuff that you are uniquely qualified to do, which is that kind of storytelling, because you're not doing all the associate producer style work that so many of us have to do to get to the place where we can tell the story.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm intrigued also to hear, because you told me you guys are aiming to deliver your first fully AI produced creative project by the end of the year. What does that look like? Is that a video? Is that design, or what is that?
So that's been sort of like a benchmark I've put for us, because it feels like the caliber of the work is there, especially with Google's video solution. Some of the video it produces is good enough now that it can pass and people don't know. Certainly not all of it, but I've seen enough where I'm like, okay, like I couldn't tell the difference between that. And then we see a lot where we certainly can. And there's crazy artifacting and people with like, all
Arms
sorts of weird, weird stuff happening. And so we're looking at it in 2 tranches. The first is we do a lot of paid media. So at Kanahoma, we manage about 40 million in marketing spend across our partners. And we have thousands of ads on like Meta and Instagram live every day, as an example, across our partners. So I'm hoping we're going to be seeing live in-market paid social advertisements within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Like, we're very close to that. But a lot of times the video is a simple clip with animated text over it. Like, this is not a big story, and sometimes you're not even seeing a person. And so that's easy because we can really self-select the clip that would be easiest to produce. And that's more of like a proof of concept. But I do believe by the end of the calendar year, 2025, we'll do full 30-second spots entirely with AI. Now, I don't think we'll do that for many partners, and I wouldn't recommend it. I think we need to see campus and we need to see students, but we do have partners that have low to no budget, where the alternative option is recutting that campaign from 4 or 5 years ago again. And we've already recut it twice. And it's like, well, what else can we do to retell this story? And so for those partners, we are looking to produce essentially 30-second spots that are fully AI driven. But we're also, to be very clear, we are concepting for that, meaning we're not coming up with a concept and then seeing if we can pull it off with AI. We're going to say, if this partner has no budget for us to go do a shoot and they have no material that is recent that would be good, well, then something is better than nothing. And so in that case, what can we concept for a spot that we think can be pulled off from AI? And so it will be very narrow in that sense, but the hope and expectation is, 6, 10, 15, 30-second spots that are entirely AI generated in market with marketing dollars behind it, driving student interest by the end of the calendar year.
That's amazing. And the generative video has been something that I've been waiting for. And there's not a lot of use cases for it. I feel like in my world is more documentary, less so like advertising spots and like social ads. But when you're telling someone's story, a lot of times there's a part of their story where there's no way you would be able to get B-roll of that on campus.
Exactly.
So they're talking about something that happened at home or, then, you could go into stock footage, but stock footage is just mostly garbage. Yeah. And you can just immediately tell if it's stock footage. But I have one client where it's one of my main like non-higher ed clients. We do human trafficking survivor stories to raise awareness for human trafficking. And obviously a lot of their stories involve a lot of past trauma that we're not going to have them reenact. We don't have the budget to hire actors to reenact. We don't have the budget to hire an animator to animate those. So I've been trying for the last 2 years of doing campaigns since generative video has become a thing, finally gotten Google VO since Google VO's come out, to actually take a scene and make it kind of dark and abstract and make it work for
Yeah,
reenacting something in a way that's abstract enough where you're not distracted. We're not trying to like literally like see this whole play by play, but like
totally.
you're just trying to give the visual vibe of this dark moment that's happening. And it's finally there. Like I was just played around with it a couple weeks ago. I was like, okay, I think we can use it this year,
Yeah.
you know?
Totally. And I think it's like, and then isn't that better than the alternative, which is either like you're not going to go out and produce something original and then you're relying on stock, or you're showing talking head for even longer than you want to. And I think that's the piece is there's a subset of the population that wants AI to replace everything, either because I think they have a financial upside to that, or they're just excited. And both are you're like, okay, that's fine. But for us, I think in our world, it's like, no, we're just trying to solve problems. And those problems can be solved any number of ways. Even the problem you just said, right? You mentioned 3 or 4 different solutions and like why those aren't going to work. And it's like, okay, well then the alternative is, and it's like, yeah, the alternative is we have less visuals to tell this story, or we can plug it in here. And that to me is where like there's a practical boots on the ground component to AI implementation, which is exactly what you're describing, which is like solving the problems that we have. Like for us with cloning a voiceover artist for scratch tracks, it wasn't like we were all excited to clone voiceover artists. It was more just like, wow, reading scratch tracks is a very time intensive thing. And we don't always read them that well. And we're asking a client to like, yeah, but imagine the person reading it's a professional and it sounds really good. And it's like, well, it's actually reading better than us and it's faster than us. Like that just solved our problem. And so that to me is where I'm most excited. But even within an agency world, it's like, well, there's like, that's one very specific example. And then you're going to have another dozen of those across the video work that you do where, by the end of the next year, you might look back and be like, wow, like it's solving a whole bunch of little things. And I do think eventually that will coalesce into larger and larger solutions, but we're not there yet. And I don't know about you, I'm not rushing it. Like I'm not out here looking to like take pride in using AI over something else and like fly that banner. We're not trying to be the most advanced AI agency ever. We're just trying to produce really good work. And when AI can help us do that, awesome,
Yeah, I think every organization kind of has to like come up to this new baseline of like, there's no world in which like AI is not going to be helpful on some level. Just some basic ChatGPT stuff. Like there's no reason to do everything manually anymore, no matter what you feel about AI. So I think most organizations, higher ed included, just needs to come up to this next rung on the ladder of like,
yes,
okay,
totally
let's
agree.
just get let's get everyone on a foundational same page about like
Yes.
what can be done here.
Exactly. I mean, I had a partner that's asked me to come speak to their team because of that exact concern, which is like, I'm looking at the organization. Some people are early adopters and some people are almost like intentionally abrasive to embracing it at all. And the reality is like, I think the idea of like, we can operate without it is long gone and people need to embrace it. So even for us at Canahoma, it was like, at a minimum this year, I'm going to make sure people are informed and ideally inspired. And like education has been that first prong. And we've moved past that. But any organization, any team of any size, it's like this needs to be the thing that we push. What makes it very hard is the teams are very busy today, and it's an inefficient tool to implement usually if you're actually going to QA it and make sure it's implemented well, which means that it takes more time to implement AI to do it faster the next go around. And for a lot of teams, the people doing it are just going to do it the way they've done it because they're overworked, they're trying to get these tasks off their plate, they're trying to get the work done, which means AI implementation disproportionately has to be really a top-down supported initiative. And that's important because some of us, myself included, sometimes show our age, where it's like, okay, well, I'm running this organization. Like I'm not the most tech forward person on the team necessarily, but suddenly like I actually view like one of my primary jobs at Canahoma, like one of my probably 5 top bullets for my job as a founder and CEO is AI enablement. Because if I don't drive it that aggressively, the rest of the organization won't follow. And so I think for a lot of teams, leaders are looking for their teams to go figure out how to do it. And it's like, well, no, unfortunately, like you might be a VP of marketing or enrollment, but like you have to be the one doing this out front in order to get your team collectively inspired enough to ensure they're exploring it fully.
Oh, that's so smart. Yeah, I mean, because we have a lot of, director level, VP level people that listen to this, and that's such good advice for them to be the ones leading the charge and saying, hey, we got to figure this out, rather than just letting everyone kind of like the Wild West of everyone kind of use their own tools and things like that. If a college, marketing department wanted to start integrating some AI, taking that next step up to the next rung, what steps would you recommend for that VP or for that, CMO level leader?
Great question. First thing for that leader to be an early adopter yourself, go out and explore. Second thing would be, I would pick one core tool to go in on. I would almost certainly say ChatGPT is the best place to do that. I'd highly encourage folks, if you have the budget, to get Teams accounts. It's $20 a month per employee, but it lets you upload files and it creates images and just gives you more access to deeper research solutions. And so highly recommend everybody get team accounts for everybody that they can. I would very much focus on knowledge sharing as one of the early things. If you can afford a consultant to come in, that's great. If you can't, share some videos and kind of come together and have a little bit of a working lunch or a workshop. I would highly encourage like a Slack channel like we have, some very tactical things. We got everybody ChatGPT Teams accounts set up. We set up a Slack channel for everyone to share what they're doing with AI. We set up a Kanahoma AI directory where we all track the different tools that we've looked at. So even if we look at a tool and it's not working, we're able to document that and say, like, I explored this tool at this time and it didn't work. So we're sort of like trying to like pick our way through this world a little bit. And then like we had a team retreat and I had an AI showcase where I just said, open call to anybody in the organization. If you've been using AI and have interesting things you want to show, you all get 5-minute TED Talks. And we had like 7 or 8 people who all got up, and some of them were funny and some of them were very tactical and some of them were like really in the weeds. Some were 30,000 feet. And it was just like, I think showing the organization that this is a priority. It's not a priority that like I didn't get up and mandate to use AI in any specific way or anything, but it's like what I want to show you all is that your peers are doing this, because I do not believe AI is going to fundamentally replace jobs. But I believe people that use AI really well will. And what I mean by that is like an editor that understands how to use AI really well in 3 or 4 years is going to be able to produce better work faster than an editor that doesn't use it at all. And so that editor will replace an editor who isn't leveraging the tools. And so it's like, you don't need to wake up and think your whole job's going to be displaced, but you should be concerned. It's very similar to me as like when social media came out. Like if you're a marketer in 2010, 11, 12, 13 that wasn't fully in on social media, you started to be looked at as a traditional marketer. Like you sort of missed this wave. And I only say that from my story because I was at UCLA 2007 to 11, and I was very early adopter on social media. And so I all of a sudden got this disproportionate influence within the organization because even though I was young, I knew more about social media marketing than most of my very senior and experienced peers. That's going to play out here, if it probably demonstrably larger and more influential. And so it's like whatever your role is, marketing or enrollment or you're creative, there's going to be someone that does your role today in 3, 4, 5 years that understands the landscape of how the tools can be leveraged. That can be you. And that's the most exciting career opportunity. If it's not you, you will face career headwinds. And so I think there's like, let's not be scared of that. That's not here today. Let's just explore and let's ideally, leverage the tools that are available. And then the final one is if you're a boss, like free up budget as much as possible. One of the things that's been easy money for me to do has been, I've done some large AI initiatives, but for my team, it's just, well, I want to sign up for this tool for $20, done. You got it. This tool for $50, done. Got it. As much as possible, I'm trying to green light that like budget will not be the constraint to exploration.
Yeah, that's great. I take that for granted because, as the owner of my company, I'm the one primarily using these tools. I'm just like, yeah, let's sign up. Let's get. But if you were like in a more bureaucratic system where you had to get approvals for everything, it's going to slow the rate of growth so much. Totally. And just be frustrating.
Just to put it in full transparency, so like I stood up in front of the team in January at our team retreat, and I said, like, we are going to become an AI-enabled agency, is the way I positioned it. We're not going to become an AI agency, but we're going to be AI-enabled, which means we're going to leverage AI in the places that make the most sense to help us do the best work possible and push the mission forward. And I committed to spend $50,000 in 2025 on AI enablement. And it's July 15th. I've already exceeded that, which is a little crazy. But it's like that was a big number and I didn't need to do that. But as the owner of the business, I can kind of make that call. It's like, that's how big of a deal this is to me. I'm going to treat it like we're hiring another employee. And that's the level of investment we're going to make. And I felt like I needed to do that to the team. So their mindset shifted from like, oh, so you mean green light on anything we want to do? And I'm like, yes. As like, and if nothing else, train on my dollar. So even if you go on in your own career in a year or two, like you will be farther advanced than other people and I will have helped you get there. Now, hopefully everybody stays and we have a great time together. But like if nothing, and that I think that helped people realize, like if nothing else, like I'm going to try to tool you up faster than your competitors or your peers. And that should at a minimum be beneficial to you. And ideally we're going to find the way to leverage the tool so it's beneficial for all of us and we're actually producing better work.
Yeah, I love it. Man, super great conversation. I think that's a great place for us to stop. Where can people connect with you at that have questions?
Yeah, totally. So I'm on LinkedIn at Seth Odell. That's probably the best place to find me. I'm super active there. I got a weekly newsletter, or just go to kanahoma.com. It's KANAHOMA.com. And you can always find me there as well. I'm just encouraged. Thanks for having this conversation, because I think so often this is tackled by people who are all in or all against. And like, I think we're like we're just kind of floating down the river of AI, figuring this thing out. And I think that is the best place to be. And I would encourage more people to jump in with us and kind of like figure this out together. So hopefully people that did listen through don't feel overwhelmed, but definitely lean in.
Love it. All right. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. Loved it.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. 3 things I want to invite you to before you go. Number 1, if you want to know what's working right now in higher ed video, like what videos are getting tons of views, likes, comments, all that, you can get ungated access to our report, aptly named What's Working in Higher Ed Video, a comprehensive guide for higher ed Marcom leaders and content creators. So check it out at unveiled.tv/higheredvideo, and you might want to bookmark it because it's designed to be a resource for you that you can keep referring back to for inspiration. Number 2, reminder to sign up for my free newsletter all about content creation and strategy at unveiled.tv/newsletter. And number 3, follow me on LinkedIn. If you're searching for me, my name is John Azoni. It's spelled Johnazoni. I'm on there all day, every day, for better or for worse, posting regular content and engaging with folks like you. So I'd love to connect with you on there. And with that, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Higher Ed Storytelling University podcast. And as always, I am cheering you on. Okay, bye.